Good afternoon. Oh, wow. Good afternoon. So welcome to the Fireside with the Bearded Ladies, good friends of mine. I'd like to start off by us all just having a little toast because of, what a great game out of Malmo.
Yeah,
so,
thank you. Thank you.
Cheers, guys. And thank you for everyone who bought it.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, it's all right.
Lovely.
So let's kick off by introducing yourselves.
Oh, that's the hard part. My name is Haraldur Thormundsson, and I'm the Circus director of the Bearded Ladies. That means that I do as little as possible, I guess.
I'm Mark Parker. I'm the lion tamer and general dog's body of the Bearded Ladies. I'm basically the producer.
David Skarin. I'm the first lady of the Bearded Ladies, and I dabble in programming and game design.
Thank you, guys. So, Bearded Ladies,
Oh, yeah.
bit of a mysterious bunch, really. You existed, you didn't exist, you existed again, you come out with a hit game, and a very interesting name. So, why the Bearded Ladies?
Yeah, that's a long story. How much time do we have? We
43
started the company
minutes.
back in 2009, and when we did that, David had that name in mind, and I was absolutely certain that I could come up with a better name. It was just a question of presentation. So we got this little create your creative company name generator, like a slot machine, and I put in all the names of like industry phrase, like massive and entertainment and animal names and all sorts of strange stuff, and
balls,
and
dwarves.
yeah, what's the classic words that are used in those kind of company names. And I said to the team, there's no way we will come up with a worse name than the Bearded Ladies. And we pressed play, and the first name that came up was Massive Beaver Interactive. And after that, Bearded Ladies didn't sound that bad.
Similar meaning.
No, but I saw some good possibilities in having a name like that. Seeing myself like more like the Eddie Izzards of the gaming industry was one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. That it didn't, like, when I walked into that boardroom and we were gonna come up with the name. Back then, the name made sense. Before the sex changes and everything, right? It just, I looked at the guys and yeah, the Bearded Ladies. That was it. But now, yeah, it comes a little bit tricky when you see us, right?
Cool. Okay, so I think it's fair to say that Mutant Year Zero has kind of put you guys on the map in a really big way. It's based on a Swedish tabletop game from the 80s. But I mean, before I spoke to you guys, I'd never heard of it. So, what do you think choosing a very local IP, potentially hampered or could have hampered the international appeal of the game?
Yeah, we thought about that quite a bit. It was early on. This was a dream project for me and Kalle and the Swedish part of the team that had played the game as when we were young. So. The problem was we started out and we didn't know if we were going to get the IP, and we made basically the same game, right, with mutated animals and everything. So it was a scary moment when we showed it to the IP owners as well. So because he could have said no, and we were thinking, well, it's local, nobody will know it, so maybe we can get it, and then that'll fuel us. It'll fuel us that it's something that we know and can pick out of. But then on the other hand, we said we don't make it too local. Kalle was very adamant, like, no IKEA jokes, no Swedish signs, no nothing, because it needs to be, make it broad, Northern Americas or whatever. But then once the Brits came in and started working, they're like, make it more Swedish.
I think that's part of the charm, though. Really, there was.
Yeah, and I think
people sit online and they Google the Swedish words that we put on the map, and they go, oh, that says absolute death. That's cool, right? I mean, we put in. Some jokes and some things that also people outside of Sweden would understand as well. The descriptions of our items, they're usually things that everybody's got in every country.
That's true.
And it's also like, in reality, the game actually takes place halfway between where I grew up and where Kalle grew up, who started on the game. So it's super local and it's very realistic for us, but nobody else knows where this is, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, it seems to have worked. I mean, it doesn't seem to have held it back at all in terms of reaching an audience. So
No, I don't think so.
awesome. So pen and paper RPG, notoriously, full of depth, full of complicated dice rolls and statistics and lore. So what were the major challenges of changing that into a video game and addressing the challenges of the video game medium to try and convert?
I think when we started looking at this, and this is something that we were playing with more than around 10 years ago, playing with the idea of turning this IP into a game. We didn't really know the format, but we kind of had a good time sort of figuring things out, I suppose. But we wanted not to take this IP into an RPG kind of into a place, because then we would always be compared to the original game, where your imagination is really the limited part, and people would always be, or the players would always be sort of feel the what we'd say, like the limitations of the video game format. That's the reason we took the IP and structured it into the way it is.
I mean, basically, like, if you're playing, this is a great setting for, pen and paper RPG, especially with Champagne. And that's the social experience, right?
Yeah.
That's it. And there is no way we can beat that. We can't beat that in a... the thing, though, that's boring about it is the dice rolling and keeping track, especially if it's a bad rule set. So that part we can focus on, and doing the combat part and doing all of that. And then we'll just tell a story within that medium. That's where we felt like we need to mold it to that and stay away from the RPG parts, because we could never,
I think that was really smart as well.
We really like tactical games as well. It's
that's
I mean, a tactical game has there's a deterministic gameplay. That you take a percentage. There's, I don't know, there's a 50, there's 25, there's 75, 100%. There's crit bonuses, there's stat bonuses. There's some good things that we can take from RPGs, but we don't have to provide, I'm going to attack somebody with a shovel or a bag of chips, because that's the imagination of a tabletop game. And also, that's a very social thing, a tabletop game. And this is a single-player experience, although it can be played kind of socially, where people sit together and play.
Yeah, couch co-op kind of.
And I think one interesting part as well in why we actually got the IP was that we were bold enough to actually take the IP and take it into a new format, because for a strange reason, this IP had never been turned into a video game before we got the privilege to do so. And believe me, there has been a lot of developers knocking on the IP owner's door throughout the years. But I think when he saw the way we approached the concept, he was very fascinated with that.
Cool. So, can we have a quick show of hands? How many people have played the game?
Oh yeah, paying customers.
If this was just
actually,
Europe,
some have got code.
that would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll give the game good reviews on Steam. Please make sure you do after.
So, the two main characters, Dux and Bormin.
Yeah.
Are they, the 21st century video game mascots?
We didn't know that Sonic was going to come out and just rule it.
Yeah, I mean, I got them on a T-shirt. They're kind of adorable characters in
I
their
love
own
them.
kind of way.
Yeah. No,
the
I love
underwear's
the duck.
not printed.
The duck is like, I'm in love with the duck.
They are
It
actually
seems to be the favourite for many people.
So the duck is actually these should be said are really old characters. We worked on the game 10 years ago, right? So the concepts are from then. But the duck specifically
Stand up.
is So this duck
See my
is an homage to the pen and paper RPG, but not Mutant. The same company made the Swedish Dungeons and Dragons, which had a black duck you could play.
It was a class.
So that was it was a small homage to that.
Wow.
And the pig is just based upon somebody I used to go out with.
Well, I think that was pretty obvious. Cool. So we're not going to see a film with ducks and boarmen rendered terribly by.
I mean,
in the Unreal Engine.
Did you see the CG trailer? I think we should see
Well,
a film.
yeah,
actually.
well, exactly, exactly. Did you see the Sonic trailer?
Yeah, exactly. I think we did it better.
I think so. I think so. No. Okay, so I mean, I've known you guys a while. I've known Hallie really quite a long time.
Yeah.
One way and the other. And it's sort of clear that your humour and ethos and things permeates the game, and there's this kind of dark humour. Even like you said about naming the items, that in itself demonstrates that. So how much of the kind of characterisation of the characters within the game is actually based on your studio staff?
Oh yeah, Mark is trying to put it on his ex-girlfriend, but no. Borman is. I don't know.
Borman's a grumpy. I mean, he's a grumpy kind of character. He suits me. When
well,
I get the train over from Copenhagen every day, I'm really in a bad mood.
Yeah.
Shitty trains.
It could be. And the duck, the artist is Oscar, I guess. Yeah, maybe a little bit.
And there are some resemblance.
Yeah. Pessimistic.
Oscar's
character.
not here, right?
Yeah, he's there.
Oh.
Is he here?
It's a great.
There he is.
Is it you? Like the character?
Yeah, kudos. Excellent. All right, so sort of getting slightly more serious, I suppose. What, talking about the development, why did you settle on creating an XCOM style strategy game? You've talked a little bit about not doing an RPG, but obviously there's numerous genres that could have suited the content. What was it about turn-based strategy that really felt right?
This was a long process. We kind of had the running around with a flashlight, moody, that feel, way before we decided on the XCOM stuff, actually. When we did it 10 years ago, that part would have been the same, but you would have played it more like Heroes of Might and Magic. It was still turn-based, though. I think that was just, we were afraid to do anything else as a studio of back then 5 guys, so it's a little bit easier to limit the scope. But then when it came, when they made the new XCOM, I was devastated because this was my childhood dream, was to make a better XCOM, and nobody had really made a better one than and this was, this was good. Yeah. So, but one day, a few years after it came out, I was playing it on Iron Man, and just having so much fun with it again. And I remembered the old Mutant that we had worked on, so I actually called up Kalle and said, "I know what we're gonna do. We'll do that Mutant game, but with XCOM, because people need more XCOM. We just need to find the formula." So yeah, that's how that happened.
Great.
Yeah. Another important reason was that they really wanted to make a game which I could play.
Yes.
And I suck at most, but when it comes to turn-based, I'm not stressed by any timer. So it was a game that actually I could finish.
I know exactly what he means. We used to play StarCraft back at the office,
Yeah.
okay? And we'd play against each other in teams. He would leave and go and get coffee in the middle of the game, and nobody would notice. It wasn't a high APM, so to speak. No.
Yeah.
I've always struggled with resource management games. I remember back in the day we used to have network parties, and then we'd play.
That's why he's our
Total
producer.
Annihilation would be one of the games where we would play a lot of, and I'd just spend all my resources on the first biggest thing I could do. Now I'd get swarmed by loads of smaller forces, and I'd be out of the game.
Yeah.
Now I'm the producer.
Yeah.
Face your fear.
Excel helps a lot though
Yeah.
these days. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's an XCOM style game you decided to do, turn-based strategy. So, but XCOM itself, the latest iterations were a very high bar, I think. So how did you go about making sure that what you did was as good as or better, but people weren't drawing a complete comparison?
We focused on the other part of the game,
The
to be honest.
exploration side of things.
Yeah, we focused on the part that we knew would be unique, and the transition in between real time and turn-based. A little bit sad about that actually, because I think the turn-based part could have been better in our game. But that was kind of the idea, right? Because we knew once we stick our head in there, we have to beat Fire Access
Yeah.
version, and it was a very good version. So we focused on the other part and trying to come up with a unique formula that provided something else.
Yeah.
We did. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I think one thing I sort of make the difference is that with the exploration part, we really put a lot of effort and passion into creating those maps. Or each and every map is handcrafted, and our ambition was that we want to create world worth exploring, and I think we have been able to accomplish that. And I think that is a factor that sets us and others aside.
Yeah, it's world building, storytelling. I mean, some of us at the Bearded Ladies, we used to work on the Hitman games, believe it or not, for many years, and we really wanted to do storytelling, world building. You know, something that people can go and get little details, little things, find things around, rather than just go into tactical.
It's one of the best things about Hitman, right? Is the voyeur moment when you're listening into somebody else's funny conversation while you're planning to hit somebody else, and
voyeuristic.
So that came naturally for us. Like,
Yeah.
And if you're sneaking around, add that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think, and so do you think that's actually a kind of a lesson for games developers generally, is to actually not hit your rival head on trying to beat them on the thing they do best, but to actually focus on something which you can know that you can do better.
Yeah, or something that's new with that genre. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we use a number of things, you know, terminology like Overwatch. That's in XCOM.
Yeah.
I mean, there's things that just didn't. If it's not broken, don't try and fix it.
Absolutely.
I mean, you don't get a game, you know, like an action game on a PC, and you say, oh, we're not going to use WASD. We're going to use back to the cursors again, like they did in like the mid-90s or early 90s. And you're like, yeah. Somebody did that for a reason.
Some things just work and become the language of particular types of games, and it's stupid to step away from that. Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, tabletop RPG is all about the imagination and people, you know, knowing what the characters look like in here. So bringing it to, you know, a video game, how did you go about creating a look and a feel that was unique and yours, but wouldn't alienate the existing audience from the RPG?
It's a hard one, actually.
Yeah, make some awesome lighting, make sure the fog of war looks great, and so you can scare people. And we went from there. To be honest, we've got some awesome artists in-house that made the characters and all of that. Yeah, there's something out there as well. And kind of took it from we started out on gameplay, to be honest. Like, we did not go for the visual look. We went for a mood, though.
Yeah.
With the music and everything, and much of the mood was coming from one of my artists. He knows who he is, who likes black very much. So I was keeping as much as I could black and make sure that there are pockets of light in there and stuff. And then just everything else kind of grew out of that mood. And then, okay, so how does this mood feel like when we go into day, right? Like, how do you make it a little bit eerie in the daytime? And we knew we didn't want to stylize the world, but initially we stylized the characters quite a bit, and we thought, that'll help them pop out on screen. But like, eventually we got closer and closer with them. So, and in the end, it actually turned out well, having them semi-realistic. I mean, they're not cartoon.
Realistic.
They're not cartoon, but they are, because of their silhouettes, because of how they're, the design of them. They're kind of stylized, right?
Yeah.
But the rendering is still quite realistic. And so it grew out of all these, like, I think it grew out of the mood from the start. Like, this is the mood of the game. That's what we are striving for. We put the Thing, Carpenter. It's actually not Carpenter. It's, what's his name? Italian.
No, it's Carpenter.
It was Carpenter. Well, the first...
No. Music wasn't.
Oh.
The music was Ennio
Morricone. The Thing, the music.
Yeah, we put that to it. It just went like, doom, 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 as you're sneaking around. Yeah. Okay, what's the visual representation? That's kind of how it happened.
And have you had any reaction from the hardcore pen and paper guys?
They love it.
Negative or positive?
They love it.
They love it.
I mean, I've never played the game back in its heyday, where its original form from the mid-80s. I mean, David had grown up with this, but we just got a lot of love. I mean, we've been having a couple of sessions of Mutant Year Zero, the pen and paper game, and we have a professional guy called Jonas who comes down, professional games master. He comes down. He absolutely loves the game. I mean, he understands like exactly what we said, what Hanny was talking about, where we didn't go all in with the RPG. Because if you do that, you have to go all in. Yeah, encumbrance and all this stuff. I mean, even though Mutant is actually quite an easy game to play, it's much more simple than a lot. Nice dice system.
You know why?
Having said that, I found it bastard hard. So
no, but the pen and paper game is the rules are very easy to understand.
Right.
Our game, we made it hard because.
That's Reese didn't want me to play it.
We wanted to price the game at like $5 million because we were going on the playtime that Haraldur had to go through it. But it turned out other people could run it in 3 hours, right?
Thought that was a little expensive.
Also.
We'd do a 25% sale at some point.
Yeah. So, short advertising break. You chose UE4 for the as the technology you built the game on. So what were the sort of biggest challenges using an engine, out the box rather than writing something yourself or using, a competitor maybe? And what things did you do to, add your secret sauce to differentiate from the pure Unreal out the box?
Oh, I know you love the localization.
The localization is very difficult. I'm sorry.
No.
It's very fragile. And one day I was like, we were getting ready to wrap up the game, and I was in the office at like 3 in the morning. I actually slept at the office on these bean bags things, and I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden I lost all of the translations at 3 in the morning. I just looked out the window. I thought, fuck, I'm gonna jump out the window and kill myself. But we sorted it in the end, and I think it's being improved upon in the newer versions. So I've been told by a little birdie. So.
It's one of those things. We actually didn't have, there were a few, like the crashes, the stuff that's hard to find at times, but there wasn't a specific system onto loading times in reality that kind of, where we had gone wrong. We'd used the engine a little bit wrong. That was a lesson. I'll give you the answer later.
Yeah.
That was it when it came to. Otherwise, it was honestly pretty standard problems. Every once in a while, you find an engine crash that nobody else has because they don't utilize it in the same way, right? Or timing. So, but otherwise, it wasn't that bad.
It's not been too bad. I mean,
but then when we came to things we did to the game, it's okay. So Unreal, first of all, I have to give props to number 4 for not being a pure FPS engine. Because I worked a little bit on number 3 and tried to do something else than an FPS, and don't do that.
Yeah.
It's a terrible choice. And this one is a little bit easier to pry the FPS out of it. But of course, we had a turn-based, grid-based system. So first of all, your AI was also I think it was in alpha, or it had just come out or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was, I knew it wasn't there. And since I was AI programmer on Hitman, we could do that part. So I think we did add that layer of AI and the grid. Having that match the nav mesh, for instance.
Yeah.
That's it. And Fog of War, which you should really just pull it into the engine. So people have no, you shouldn't, and people will compete with us.
Well, and that actually raises a really interesting point because of all the great UE4 developers, building great games, always build extra on top of it. It allows the boring stuff to be handled mostly, but then allows you freed up to, in your case, Fog of War was one of those features. And often there is this tension between then seeing if that can be provided back to the engine, and then everyone have it, and you lose your secret sauce. So it's like that. That's a kind of. I
would gladly give it back. Actually, I remember it was asked for actually to put it in, but that means I'm supporting that while I'm developing the game. Yeah. So now maybe we can do it.
Absolutely. I mean, it's always a tricky road. Because people offer us stuff which is great, but then the burden of support. On us, and our guys didn't write it, and so then that makes it complicated. And it's kind of.
But it has been a bit of a. I mean, people are doing the pull requests and everything on Git, right? That's working pretty well.
Yeah. I think we've gotten into a groove now that kind of allows it to happen.
Yeah,
better.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go on.
I think. It's no secret that we started working on the project in Unity, and so over to Unreal.
Oh, it was.
One of the reasons was that C++ is our first language, so we prefer to be in that rather than Sharp. But it's a very stable engine to work in, and you don't need to have a huge team to be able to accomplish a great stuff, and that's something that we have proved. And I think one thing that has changed this is the business model, because until a few years back, you need to had to have millions of dollars to be able to acquire a license. But today you can easily access that, and there are different business models to support it. And I think that was a major game changer in terms of smaller studios to actually work with the tools of their choice.
It was famously $1 million, wasn't it?
$1 million. It was, yeah. It was years before I ever worked at Epic. I approached Epic for how much a license would be, and it really was $1 million.
It's just that?
Yeah, totally.
Who was that, Sweeney?
Yeah, no, that was Mark Rain.
Rain, yeah.
Yeah.
I can imagine Sweeney saying $1 million.
It would be funny, though.
Okay, so the project is, kind of unlike pretty much anything you guys have done previously. Still a tiny team, really, but achieving a massive, high-quality, AAA quality game, to a budget, etc. So, what experience from previous lives, kind of helped you scale down to such an efficient group, but create such a fantastic experience?
Well, we did a lot of work on Hitman, and some of us developed the levels and worked with the level design and environment art for Hitman. And one of the key factors in Hitman is the stealth. So that had lent a little bit of its DNA to what we did in Mutant Year Zero. And also our dialogue. One of the things I worked on a lot when I was a producer or associate producer at IO was with the dialogue. Because Hitman has a lot of dialogue. Our game doesn't have as much dialogue and as complicated a system, but it's very important to have that interesting stuff to listen to, that voyeurism, the fun dialogue to hear just by passing by, the interaction between players, systemic dialogue during combat. That stuff was a big learning that I at least brought into the company.
Yeah, I think a lot of experience has brought a few things, right? You have your 3 C's, which is my 4 C's now from this morning. It's controls, camera, and conference crunch. And that's we knew that, so we put that in early, right? We had our controls, we had everything, so we could play around. It felt good. And then we always put some limitations on ourselves, like early on, because you build around it, even though it feels like simple stuff. So we developed the game for gamepad all the way around. From day one, it should be on gamepad. That's an extra layer that you always need to support. But as long as you do that, it helps you in the long run to create a good product. I think we had the same thing with the graphics. I had a machine at home set up exactly like a PS4 would be. So I would work at home on a PS4 PC to always make sure that we weren't way out of budget for the end of it.
We didn't know we had the Switch version coming out.
No, we didn't know that. That took a little
That's
bit
been a bit of work. Yeah.
A Switch PC, I wouldn't have worked on that.
In the old days, back in PS2 and Xbox days, when I started out also in the industry, all games started on PC, and they looked fantastic for the time on the PC. And then you'd see them on the original Xbox, not Xbox One, I can't fucking say Xbox One anymore, thanks Microsoft. Original Xbox and PS2 or GameCube, and then you'd see heavy reduction in quality, levels made really small and enemies reduced, and it was noticeably different. But now people we generally try and work upwards. So when you get into your Xbox enhanced Xbox experience or PlayStation Pro or whatever, the game can be given a bit more fat.
Yeah, and I think that's the right way of approaching it, right? Because
if
you build your game mechanics around ray tracing, that's going to be a problem.
Turning
it
off
off.
at this stage.
Yeah, not going to get it running on your Switch, are you? So what next for Mutant Zero?
Yeah, we're launching a Switch version at the end of July, along with a big DLC. Then the game will also be launched in retail, and after that it's holiday.
Yep.
Yeah,
and
we
then
have you have some game ideas coming up.
got some terrible ideas. We sit sometimes, have lunch, and come up with really, really bad ideas.
So we can user test them maybe.
Yeah, we could do, but what we've got planned next is to be decided, and it's going to be
No,
very
it's
exciting.
Chairman Wow.
Chairman Wow, that sounds like a good game. Paul Potts Piss Pot.
Paul Potts Piss Pot. I love that one.
Yeah, that was one.
you
we
buy-
talked
Is that like a
about.
match 3 game, that one?
It will be great on Switch.
It's just different things you match. Just
Yeah,
the
so
way
we have some things,
why not?
we're working on.
Why not?
We're workshopping them at the moment.
We'll co-develop it with you guys, as long as you fund
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I'm all for match 3. So finally, what have you guys learned from the development of Mutant that you think is valuable to pass on to?
I'm way too old to learn stuff. I just do it.
I mean, I know everything. So no, but well, most things. But I think it just proves that. I mean, we come from AAA companies originally, which is all well and good, and some of them they just completely bloat. And one of the things I've learned is that you can do a lot with a small team if you've got the right tools and the right attitude.
Attitude, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good attitude.
Speak for yourself there, right?
Yeah.
I've only been at one big company, and that's with you. So I've learned that Mark can work in a smaller company, which was nice.
Yeah.
No,
That's
actually,
true.
I would actually go back to the it's like to actually give something useful to somebody for once. On this would be the loading times thing. That was the only thing that hit us. That wasn't a surprise, right? That wasn't like a weird crash or anything like that. That we used the blueprints a lot, and it turned out that the dependency system in Unreal will reference any asset that you try to cast to in a blueprint, right? And that means it needs to be loaded. Any textures, anything that's in that object being directly referenced need to be loaded. This didn't really hit us on PC, right? Because everybody's got an SSD nowadays, and even on the slower ones it would be fine, but on console it was terrible. Yeah. So we had to spend weeks just breaking dependencies. So if you're working in Unreal and you're like, a year away from shipping, start looking at that now, and you should be using like soft asset pointers everywhere, async loading them, or not casting, using a bit more event in between blueprints. Would be very, very preferable, and that will actually work for you, because next project we won't spend like I think it was a good 6 weeks or something in the end.
And the poor artists were stuck.
It wasn't all of us, but I mean, took a lot of the programming team to sit around and do that, which was, we made some magic in 6 weeks before that, right?
yeah, exactly. So, we got any questions from the floor for the guys? Really?
Come on, guys.
Come on.
You didn't prepare a single thing to hassle him?
Please get them removed from the theatre, those guys.
All right. Oh,
There's somebody.
I guess.
We sell it on eBay.
Yeah, I'm going to put it at $1 billion. I don't know if we're going to put it in. I'll give you a card. You can send me an email, and it's one CPP file and a couple of system textures. I'll hand it to you, as long as you don't come back with any support questions. You get it as a black box, okay?
Cool. Anybody else? Well, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure working with you.
Come
It's
on,
been a pleasure
I thought
talking
we were going to
about
go through like 4 of these. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much for listening.
All right.